Today I'll be going over the myth, the man, and the moral migraine that is Paul Atreides, the noble heir to spice-fueled messiah with the body count. We'll break down the power, the prophecy, and the slow, cinematic descent into a god complex with good hair. This is Dune. This is what happens when the Chosen One stops asking questions. Sidebar, this deep dive is based off the movies. It has little to do with the books for any hardcore readers out there. Let's start at the beginning. Paul is the son of Duke Leto Atreides, trained in politics, combat, philosophy, and passive-aggressive smoldering. He's the product of every elite boarding school program wrapped in a destiny-enhancing genetic experiment. But Paul isn't just any protagonist. He's the one, not because he earned it, but because a bunch of space witches played eugenics Jenga and said, "This bloodline looks spicy," literally. What follows is a crash course in desert survival, messianic manipulation, and hallucinating so hard you invent interstellar jihad. Paul sees the future, and instead of saying, maybe let's not, he basically shrugs and says, yeah, let's ride the worm. If Harry Potter was told he'd become Voldemort unless he chilled, and he didn't chill, that's Paul. Charisma is power, but charisma plus destiny? That's a Molotov cocktail of bad decisions wrapped in good intentions. And Paul's the guy holding the match while whispering, "It's for the greater good." Paul becomes Medivh because he has to, or maybe because he wants to. That's the scary part. He inspires the Freemen by becoming their myth. What happens when the myth takes over the man, and the man starts quoting himself like scripture? 1 minute you're bonding with your desert bros and drinking cactus smoothies. Next minute you're leading a holy war with an army hanging on your every word. Because silence from you might mean invasion, and a whisper might mean death. And Paul lets it happen. He needs them to believe, because without belief, he's just a sweaty guy in a sandworm with delusions of grandeur. And deep down, maybe he's starting to believe the hype too.
Your grandfather said, "A great man doesn't seek to lead. He's called to it."
Duke Leto Atreides is the kind of leader who believes in honor, diplomacy, and occasionally not killing everyone in the room. But this makes him a tactical liability in the universe of Dune. He's trying to run a feudal empire with modern HR values. The man walks into Arrakis like it's a corporate restructure, not a trap laid by a 1,000-year-old intergalactic snake cult. His strategy? Be the bigger man, and then die for it. To his credit, Leto's fatal flaw isn't cowardice or pride, it's competence. He plays fair in a galaxy designed by people who cheat on the tutorial. He's raising Paul to be better, wiser, less likely to start a galactic jihad. But parenting is hard when your coworkers are Harkonnens, and your exit interview involves poisonous gas. Leto doesn't want to rule by fear, he wants to inspire. Unfortunately, the only thing he inspires is a spectacular funeral.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings obliteration.
Lady Jessica is what happens when your mom is a trained psychic assassin who chose love over a millennial-long eugenics plan, and that's the least complicated thing about her. She was supposed to give birth to a daughter, a carefully calculated pawn in the Bene Gesserit's grand genetic plan. Instead, she fell in love and gave the universe Paul. Jessica operates on 5 levels at once: mother, mentor, political liability, desert survivalist, and spiritual cheat code. She walks into the Freemen's lives and immediately becomes their religious figure and birthing coach. Her greatest strength is her adaptability. Her greatest weakness is raising a son who might be Space Jesus with a God complex. She teaches Paul control, but forgets to ask, control for what? For whom? Jessica's tragedy is existential. She created the Messiah with the best intentions, and now she has to watch the galaxy burn from the front row, with front-facing guilt and Bene Gesserit posture.
When is a gift not a gift?
Baron Harkonnen isn't a villain. He's a warning, a writing symbol of what happens when appetite becomes empire. He doesn't just kill Duke Leto. He erases House Atreides like it's a bad smell in his bathwater. He doesn't walk, he floats, like gravity itself wants nothing to do with him. And he doesn't conquer out of strategy. He conquers because decay is easier than discipline. But the real horror? He thinks he's eternal. He thinks if he gorges on enough power, he can outlive relevance. But time, like spice, doesn't care how many people you crush on your way up. It just buries you slower.
But our plans are measured in centuries. We have other prospects, if he fulfills his promise.
Enter the Bene Gesserit, a secret sisterhood whose hobbies include voice control, political breeding, galactic shadow puppetry, and ruining lives with a smirk. They don't want chaos, they want control. And Paul, he's the horse that jumped the fence, kicked the rider, and now leads a stampede. He wasn't supposed to be the Kwisatz Haderach yet, but when you spend generations selectively breeding for someone who can literally exist in all futures, maybe don't act shocked when he takes the reins and starts a holy war while you're still drafting the prophecy memo. The Bene Gesserit are terrifying because they believe the ends justify the means. Unfortunately, the means are usually human lives, and the ends are never quite what they planned. It's chests with living pieces, and Paul just flipped the board.
The hell, dog!
Duncan Idaho isn't just a sword. He's Paul's last link to humanity before the Messiah complex kicks in. Where others see a chosen one, Duncan sees a kid, a friend, someone worth protecting not because of destiny but in spite of it. He's not preaching prophecy, he's showing up, bleeding out, and still saying, I got you. Duncan doesn't shape Paul through power, he shapes him through presence. When Duncan dies, it's not just the body count, it's the last real voice in Paul's life that wasn't whispering worship or war. And when that's gone, Paul doesn't just grieve, he starts becoming someone Duncan might not even recognize. He was a blade, but more than that, he was a compass. And without him, Paul doesn't just lose a friend, he loses direction.
The Emperor. Take everything we built and give it to that Duke! How?
Glasser Rabban isn't a strategist, he's a sledgehammer in a world that already cracked. Raised by the Baron to rule through fear, Rabban thinks control comes from volume. If he yells loud enough, maybe people won't notice he's out of ideas. He's not built to rule, he's built to break. Spice quotas, Freeman resistance, his own blood pressure. The Baron uses him like a blunt object, just smart enough to be useful, just stupid enough to stay obedient. Rabban isn't just a tyrant, he's bait, a placeholder tyrant so bad, people will beg for his replacement. And spoiler, that replacement isn't mercy, it's someone way worse.
Honor requires that I be elsewhere. She.
Stilgar, the Freeman war chief turned accidental hype man. To him, Paul is the answer to prophecy, a one-man solution to centuries of oppression, imperialism, and sand-related suffering. But Stilgar's belief makes him blind. He stops questioning, stops choosing. He becomes a tool, not for Paul, but for the myth Paul has become, which is somehow even more powerful than the man himself. And that's the real tragedy of Dune. Not just that people follow Paul, but that they need to. Because hope is scarce, and Paul, spice visions and all, is the only thing left to believe in when everything else burns and betrays you. Stilgar doesn't lose faith, he loses himself inside it.
Will it be that bad?
You don't get it, do you? You don't really understand the grave nature of what's happening to us.
Gurney is the grizzled mentor with the loot in one hand, a trauma story in the other, and enough emotional baggage to fill a spice freighter. He's Paul's military conscience, his battle-scarred Jiminy Cricket, and the only man in the galaxy who can quote poetry mid-battle without losing credibility. He believes in Paul, sure, but he also believes in duty, and sometimes duty means turning a blind eye, while your messiah in training builds an army of sand ninjas and plots a religious takeover like it's a summer internship. If Gurney had a catchphrase, it'd be, "This is fine, probably not fine, but fine. Pass the whiskey." Shanam Kurno IV is the guy who peaked in high school, became Space Emperor through inheritance and inertia, and now lives in constant fear of being overthrown by a teenager in a cloak and eyeliner. He's not evil, just cowardly, and in a universe like Dune, that's enough to doom you. He governs through legacy and fear, but when those fail, he sends in the Sardaukar, his personal death monks with matching outfits and no sense of humor. He sends them to maintain control, but it's like using a nuke to kill a cockroach, and it doesn't work, because Paul isn't fighting for land, he's fighting with destiny, and that's not something you can stab, intimidate, or put on a trial. It's a force, and Shaddam is just in the way.
You can't use direct force. Repression only makes a religion flourish.
Princess Irulan has grown up watching empires move like chess pieces. From the safety of the palace, politics looked elegant, measured. To her, power was something inherited, negotiated, maintained through the right words and alliances. She thinks understanding the game is the same as playing it. But when the real moves begin, when Arrakis falls, when a traitor's blood is spilled, she starts to realize she's not a player, she's a piece. She's not unkind, not unwise, just unready. In a world ruled by prophecy, power, and war, Irulan still believes reason can hold things together. And that might be her greatest flaw.
I don't believe you're the Lisan al-Gaib. But I want you to die with honor.
Chaney is the voice of reality, the one person who looks at Paul and doesn't see a god, just a guy with anxiety, good hair, and a dangerous destiny complex. She doesn't want holy war, she wants freedom, but Paul's freedom costs lives, and more often than not, they're other people's. He promises her he won't fall for the trap of power, and then he falls face first into it. Like a trust fall, with no one catching him, and a crowd cheering him to fall faster. Her tragedy is that she loves a man she can't follow all the way. Her clarity is his burden, but warnings go unheeded, and when he chooses power over peace, it's not just betrayal, it's the slow death of the man she believed in, replaced by a symbol she never asked for.
Would you like some fresh meats, my darlings?
Fade Ratha Harkonnen, the proud of House Harkonnen, genetically engineered to stab first and pronounce your doom later. If Paul is destiny's chosen, Fade is the gym rat version of nihilism. He is not deep, he's deadly. Less Messiah, more menace. Fade isn't just Paul's rival, he's what Paul could have been without a conscience. A product of cruelty, molded by sadism, and backed by an uncle who treats genocide like a party game. The showdown is myth versus monster, prophecy versus pride, eyeliner versus ego. But what makes it tragic is that Fade has no illusions. He knows what he is, a weapon, and he likes it. So when Paul defeats him, it isn't just a victory, it's a warning. Because the only thing scarier than a tyrant with a vision is one without it. Fade dies as he lived, smirking, slicing, and convinced he's the main character. And in another universe, he probably is.
Lead them to paradise.
By the end of part 2, Paul wins, but it feels like losing. He gets the throne, the empire, the girl, and the holy war he said he'd avoid. This isn't victory, it's inevitability. He saw the future, saw the death, the fire, the galaxy burning in his name, and he still stepped into it. So is Paul a tyrant? Maybe not yet, but he's not a hero either. He's a mirror, reflecting the hopes, fears, and failures of everyone who follows him. He's what happens when prophecy meets politics, when morality loses to momentum. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch is someone who creates their own values, who transcends morality and leads by example, not by birthright or fate. So where does Paul fit in? He's got the burden of Messiah marketing with none of the autonomy. Paul doesn't break the system, he becomes the system. He doesn't reject the prophecy, he weaponizes it. The Bene Gesserit wanted a chess piece, and he showed up as the entire board, flipped it, and then monetized the chaos. You might think that makes him powerful. It doesn't. It makes him trapped in a destiny feedback loop, because Paul can see 1,000 futures, and they all end with people dying in his name. His problem isn't moral clarity, it's moral paralysis dressed in dramatic lighting. He's less Übermensch and more Uber-stuck. Nietzsche would have thrown his mustache at the screen and then written a bitter sequel titled, Thus Spoke Not Paul. Dune teaches us that power isn't always taken. Sometimes it's handed to you on a silver platter wrapped in prophecy and guilt. And sometimes the hardest choice isn't to lead, but to refuse. So next time you think you'd make a great leader, ask yourself, do you want to help people, or do you just want the throne? Whatever you decide, I'm glad you've got this far, and be sure to like or subscribe, because more is on the way.